meeting of the Board of Education at RCC on Tuesday, March 17th. Needs to mute their computer.
While we're dealing
We got it.
with technical difficulties, our program today is going to be Greg McCown, and on our capital outlay and facilities equipment update. This is similar to the presentation did a year ago for you. We all know this is an important conversation. I will just start by saying this is always important. It's critically important now because as we think about the budget process and our limited resources and how constrained some of our decisions are going to be moving forward. Greg and his team's ability to look at the condition of our facilities and figure out what our strategies around deferred maintenance need to be so we can make strategic and calculated decisions and sometimes figure out where a $5,000 investment today will protect a $80,000 investment down the road. That's really important work. And so I will just start by saying I appreciate the diligence they've given the process. It's been something that's been kind of a passion project of his the last several of years. And so I look forward to the presentation and questions you might have from it.
All right, well, we're going to go back up. And can you show Indra, can you show her little face too? Thanks. So thank you. I appreciate that. And also, we're going to start with introduction of guests.
Second time I've done that this week.
It's okay. Okay. So we'll start with you.
Sounds good, Madam Chairman. Isam Mohammed, Executive Director, Institutional Effectiveness Planning.
I'm Tim Sensabaugh. I'm a Director of Transportation and Industrial Technology.
Hi, I'm Cass Sinclair, Executive Director of the Road Community College Foundation.
Mike Pollock, Chief Financial Officer.
Greg McCown, Chief Facilities Management Officer.
Lisa Stanton, Vice President of Operations and Finance.
All right, thank you so much. We do have a quorum. We've got Indra online. Welcome, Indra.
Yes, hello.
Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And so, Greg, you are on.
Okay, well, thank
After
you.
that very lovely introduction.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for allowing me to give this presentation today. Some information you will recognize from our last time we discussed this and with some updates. So with that. So I want to go over a couple key definitions here just as we go through to help out. So the FCA is referred to quite a bit, and it's the Facilities Condition Assessment. The FCI is the Facilities Condition Indexing. Renewal, what this means is this is scheduled system and equipment replacement based on the condition assessment and industry life cycle standards. Non-renewal is unplanned corrective action repairs or one-time campus improvement projects, which ultimately end up becoming action packs. Campus construction, those are large-scale capital construction projects generally associated with master planning. And preventative maintenance. This is a key one for what we're doing here. Deferred maintenance are planned and unplanned maintenance that has been postponed, usually due to a lack of available funding. And I just added this last one here because I get a lot of questions about what is APA? Is that a writing standard? Which, yes, but in this case, it's the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. So just a reminder of our building vintages. RCC operates 41 buildings totaling just under 500,000 square feet, not including buried infrastructure, parking lots, sidewalks, etc. Approximately half of those buildings date back to 1965, and at least one of them, which is RVC-B, is 1938. Now, we do have another building, RVC-A, which is also the same vintage, but again, we're talking about buildings that we operate. 32 of the district buildings are approximately 80% or over 30 years, with most of the site infrastructure the same age or older. So in December of 2023, the college completed a facility condition assessment with McKinstry. The assessment evaluated the existing conditions of the campuses to do three primary steps: to develop a 30-year renewal plan, that's the recurring scheduling, replacement of the assets in the buildings, based on life cycles of building components, which included cost estimates with escalation from year to year. So we tried to be as forward-thinking on this plan as we possibly could. Asset tag and inventorying of all undocumented building equipment that requires routine servicing, which were approximately 2,500 is what we included new to the college. Developed an engineered preventative maintenance plan for all of that newly inventoried assets. So let's talk a little bit about the life cycle and estimated remaining life. So the equipment and systems life cycles were based on manufacturing specifications and also industry standards. So that included references like the International Facilities Management Association, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and there's that APA, Association of Physical Plant Administrators. So the estimated or remaining life was calculated using 3 data points primarily. It's actual condition of the systems, expected useful life of the systems, and the probability of failure of the systems. And I underline expected useful life because that takes us right down to our chart. And you can see based off of industry recommendations and their specifications, you've got the optimal performance at the top, and you can see where the equipment or system begins to drop off. That outer line is aging of that system with normal maintenance. The inside line that drops off quite dramatically is the aging of the system on that same curve, but without maintenance. And then the delta between the two is the service life that's lost. And that's something that our consultants took great care to evaluate for each one of our pieces of equipment. So here's a pivot chart from our condition assessment workbook. And there's a lot of information here. Hopefully it's large enough we can see. So the 1 through 5 at the top there, you can see I highlighted the split systems air handler. So we're using Coates Hall as this demonstration here. And so the split system air handler is a grouping under the category D30 for HVAC, and it's a bunch of them. And for year 1, we had roughly $106,000 of equipment earmarked for replacement. And that's the work that we did that you all know about that we spent district-wide. We had quite a lot in Coates Hall. Year 4, you can see we have a much smaller number, about $10,000 worth of equipment in that one category of a split system air handler. The next category over, we're going to talk a little bit more in a few of the future upcoming slides here, and that's the condition index that we talked about. It's at 0.21, which is a fairly low number for Coates Hall. The next line item or column is the total industry expected life cycle of that particular category of equipment, which is 15 years. And the total average asset age for that category for Coates Hall is 26. So we're, at that time, it was 11 years past. And again, this is, 3 years ago. So here's an actual snapshot directly out of the condition assessment workbook. And there's some different equipment here that I highlighted. This is, again, Coates Hall, split system condensing unit. Basically, this is the outdoor unit. And you can see the various asset sizing, the tonnages under the same categories. And you can see here the industry life cycle, 15 years, we talked about that. But there's a column at the end that's yellow, and that's the estimated observed life cycle. And that's important because even though the equipment is aged out, we still may be taking very good care of it, have great maintenance records, and it may not be as efficient as a new unit, but it still has life left. And so that was an important piece of that evaluation. Like Randy was talking about, being able to figure out what type of equipment needs to be replaced now and prioritize those replacements. And you can see in the blue box down below, the last 2 show that the industry life is 6 years left. And we've got at least an extra couple of years beyond that the engineers believe that we could gain from that, postponing that equipment. So that's all factored into this 30-year plan. So here's a quick overview again of using Coates Hall as our example. These are just some general building conditions. I won't go into every bit of it, but it talks about, the building does not have a fire sprinkler system, instead has extinguishers. It talks about the interior finishes, upgrading all T8 light fixtures to LEDs, and the benefits of that. It talks about the electrical, which is the exterior 400 amp motor control center, the electrical that you see in the picture there, found to have rusting equipment and wear. And the last bullet point talks a little bit about some water infiltration damage. Why I wanted to focus on these kind of in the weeds items is because when we open up the equipment, the interior workings of that aged out equipment is in very good condition. And so what we're doing right now presently, because these items were scheduled for replacement, is having a secondary evaluation and an infrared scanning of that equipment to verify that we have no hot spots and we have, to not get too far into the details, but can we get another 5 years out of this equipment? We do want to replace it, but I'm sure we have other things. I know we have other things that are higher priority. And so anyway, these are just a summary of that building. It says here 35 years. At the time, it is now 38 years old. Again, back to the facility rating, 0.21. That'll come up later when we're looking at the condition indexing. And it gives an idea about in year one, the asset replacement cost is about $279,000. And we'll highlight these as we come up in future slides. Talking a little bit about the facility condition indexing process. This is basically a score that's obtained by dividing the cost of all equipment and building systems that are scheduled for current replacement, including the backlog or deferred items, by the current estimated replacement value of the building. And that gives us a fractional number. And the purpose is identifying whether or not, just a dashboard view to identify whether or not buildings should be scheduled for complete renovation, demolition, replacement, or only just a few items are needed. Essentially, does the college want to invest any more money in that facility based off of its current condition? So we had 0.21 is what Coates Hall was, and you can see here that's in the fair to poor category. That last slide, the consultants, they valued it at poor. I would argue that it's more in a fair condition. Still not as good as it needs to be though.
And do you mind if we ask you questions as we go? Is that replacement condition for the entire building? Like tear it down and start over?
Yeah, it's based off of all of the components that make up the building and then dividing that by the total building cost. Is that what you're asking? To give us that number. It's a high level reference point is what we're looking at. So for example, if we had let's just say it was a 0.31, it was this poor, absolutely terrible building. And we're proposing to do a bunch of renewal work to replace HVAC units and plumbing and electrical. We might think, let's not do that. Let's wait and look at another building or possibly tearing this one down and replacing it. It just gives us that high level of talking point to really dig deeper. And so the condition index is over 10-year cycles here in this 30-year plan. So the first 10 years is what we're looking at here. So that 0.21. So the idea is that when we come back and reassess our facilities, which I will be proposing to do that with McKinstry, not this upcoming year, but the year after, so 27, 28, we should see improvement in our condition indexing because we've just spent a bunch of money replacing and improving our facilities. So here's an example of Redwood campus, for example, of that condition index. Again, this is 3 years in past. And so this would get updated. But Coates Hall, you can see here, is a 0.21 for a 36-year building at the time. And I highlighted Weisman building just because I thought it was an interesting reference that it is 10 years older, roughly the same size, and it is about the same condition, but at 10 years older. Let me back up here. The green obviously are newer facilities. And so the reason why O building, there's 0.04 is that was within the first year of warranty that we had that building that we were doing this. And so we had a few issues that were being corrected and the engineers actually identified those as we were going through. They were very astute to pick that up. So the Facilities Management Plan Construction Department took this information and created a detailed 5-year plan and divided it into 4 categories: renewal, capital equipment, non-renewal, and capital construction. And so it's important as we go through this, we'll talk a little bit about the capital equipment fluctuates, and what that is golf carts, tractors, vehicles, things that are not part of the campus infrastructure, but their equipment, capital equipment, definitely capitalized. And then non-renewal fluctuates because these are one-time projects that turn into action-packed projects and can fluctuate depending on resource availability and time commitment to actually get the work completed. So let's go into category 1, renewal. So this addresses deferred maintenance and plan system replacement based on the condition assessment and industry life cycle standards. You'll see there's kind of a common theme as we're going through here. The estimated observed system life remaining is also factored into whether the replacement can be deferred from industry standard. So this is where we were talking about this methodology being essential in prioritizing what deferred maintenance can we continue with when we have limited resources. So the following is a 5-year plan showing this one category of renewal. You can see first year, these are the same numbers, the total that we had in the beginning here. So total is 4,339,282 and so on. So we're in year 3 going into this next budget cycle. We're in year 3. So year 1, we had prioritized not having all the resources necessary to catch everything up at once. We prioritized 2.74 million of the 4.33 that was referenced there and identified in the condition assessment. So that prioritization was determined by the building system and equipment type, what could be completed with available staffing resources, and also the college funding. Quite frankly, you know, there's only so much work that we can actually get done in a fiscal year as well. So that prioritized renewal work was then redirected to be included as part of the bond work. And I think that's important because all the areas that were slated to be renovated as part of that bond effort would have taken care of all these issues. So it made sense. However, when that didn't work out, we moved into year 2, we had prioritized 857,000 of the 3.18 million. And we also included the year 1 work that didn't get completed. So for this fiscal year that we're in right now, we had 3.59 million of work. And that work is presently all scheduled to be completed prior to June 30th. So year 3 from that list, we're looking at the proposed renewal budget is 802,000. And that includes what we call second tier prioritization from the first 2 years that didn't make the cut, but they're still really important. And so we moved them into year 3. So capital equipment, this is non-renewal. It's not cyclical. It's just capitalized equipment, not already in the condition assessment for scheduled replacement. So presently, this category only includes the facilities management, planning, construction, operations equipment, like we talked about, golf carts, tractors, equipment. But it could easily be used to capture other planned college equipment needs that fall in that similar category, which could be for IT or even academic equipment as well. And I highlighted this specifically, academic equipment, because we are presently in the middle of a project right now with McKinstry, the same group that actually did this for us, to asset tag and inventory all of the serviceable academic equipment not considered non-building. So for example, the welding equipment or the CNC machines, I'm just making something up here, but those are all things that are serviceable and have a life cycle, very high cost item. It would make sense to know where are we in that life cycle when it comes time to replacing that equipment. And so they will be grouped into the same source data for use by the college. So what's been budgeted, what's been completed? So year 1, we talked about that. All of that equipment has been purchased and received through some competitive pricing and using cooperative contracting. We were able to save a few dollars, which was good. Year 2, all of the equipment for this for year 2 currently we're in has been purchased and received and will be installed and everything prior to June 30. And so those are the dollar amounts on the list here. Oops. And again, we're in year 3. So what we're proposing coming up here is about $650,000 of equipment. So category 3, we're almost through the categories. The non-renewal, this is corrective action repairs or one-time campus improvement projects, CIPs, which turn into action packs, requested by all departments. So this can include, alterations, changing of programs, instructional methods, or adoption of new technology. Really, anything that we're modifying the campus that's not tied to the renewal process and the long-term sustainability upkeep of our buildings and campuses. So the questions asked often, well, what about unplanned mid-year campus modification requests? And we have a process for that, and it's Administrative Procedure 6501. And so because they're unplanned and unknown, they're not included here in this document. So what we had here was $125,000 in year one. We have $612,000 this year that we're finishing up, and the next year's proposed is $479,000. So what have we done and where are we at? Year one, everything was completed on time before June 30. Year two, everything is scheduled for completion prior to June 30. So favorite words, on time, on budget. So this is a 5-year plan summary of all those pages we just looked at rolled up, not including capital construction. And so the breakdown here is that the renewal plan, which is really the key to long-term sustainability of college facilities, is a total 5-year plan of $11 million. And when we get to the last slide, it'll be important. You'll see why. Capital equipment, we're looking at a $1.6 million investment, and the non-renewal or projects modifications, we're looking at about $2 million investment over the next 3 remaining years. Well, it's over 5 years, excuse me, but we're in year 3 now. So the last category is capital construction, and this identifies obviously campus development projects, mostly tied to master planning, new facilities, new campuses, large modifications. And these types of projects are generally funded by grants and general obligation bonds or other funding sources outside the college's operating budget. So following the results of the last bond campaign, all of the capital construction projects that were built into this worksheet have all been removed except for the transportation technology projects. So this is just an almost final page here, a roll up of the 5-year plan, which includes all of the categories, the renewal, capital equipment, non-renewal, and capital construction for all 5 years. And you can see there at the bottom, that's a $31.7 million. But of that, 17 million is the 2 transportation technology projects. So I want to point out here that the 5-year renewal plan, we talked about, it was a little over $11 million. The condition assessment identifies about 8.3 million of renewal within the first 3 years. Now that was too much to bite off at one time. And so the college budgeted 3.59 million for renewal in the first 2 years. And if year 3 is approved, RCC will have committed 4.39 million of the renewal within the first 3 years. So roughly half of what the condition assessment identified. And that's a significant improvement and a significant number, because to catch up in the first 3 years, really all of that deferred maintenance was a huge number. That's the conclusion. I always use this picture, even though the science center's not built yet. All the clouds and everything, it was a drone picture.
Better shop at it.
It's gonna be really updated. We won't have transportation technology.
Have to get it,
Bring the drone back out just to get that picture. Yeah.
pick just the right one.
So can I just add a few comments in there? The amount of work that Greg and his team do, because we can't afford $14 million in 5 years for, I think the last number on there was $18 million in 5 years for deferred maintenance and renewal, right? His team actually sits down and goes through this list that has been compiled, but they also are doing additional work to make sure that things are still okay, that they're selecting the projects that are necessary for right now and coming forward with. So it's not just, Greg, you have $5. It's, Greg, what do you need? What has to get done? Where are we at? Will these other assets still last as we move forward? And yes, there is a gamble, but we have reserves for that, and his team does an amazing job. So I just want to put that plug out there and let you know that. And then with the instructional equipment, that has been a project we've talked about for a long time. So we have been asset tagging things But from an accounting perspective, so we know where they are, this is really from a use and what do we need to replace perspective. And it's a long-term project we've been looking at, and it's Greg and his team really that have identified McKinn Street. Greg spent a lot of time finding a company to come out and be able to do that. So a lot of work is going on behind these the scenes. It's not just McKinn Street put this together for us and we move forward. I mean, there's still a lot of expertise that is happening from Greg and his team.
Finish your thought. And I wanted to say one too before we open it up for questions, or two things. One, you heard Greg reference frequently in the presentation action pack. And so I'll give a little more context on that. As part of our zero-based budgeting, we're very particular about what we ask departments to put into their departmental budget. And so when they're asking for something that's looking at one-time project, something like that, or new to the system, it gets submitted as an action pack, so it can be reviewed with that specific scrutiny. And then the final comment I want to make before opening it up is how this looks like in real life. So very difficult budget planning process for us this year going into next year. And because Greg and his team have done this thoughtful work, what they brought to the budget, we got to the point, I said, Greg, I just want you to say, do you recommend we do this, or is this something we can put off? And he could say with confidence, this is something I think we should do. This is something I think we should do. This is something we can put off. And it was not just, well, maybe Greg looked at it 9 months ago. It's the index that's informing his recommendations on those.
Clearly, it's a lot of work. Thank you for that. I'm wondering sort of strategic and around the organization's capacity to just say there's some bond opportunity in the future, and like what can wait. Is that also part of the complex calculus that you're doing? Yeah. I knew that the answer, Lisa.
Great. No, I mean, Greg's doing that, but we do talk, like we have, remember we put together, and we'll talk about it a little bit later tonight, but the projects for the November 24 bond levy, those are projects we would really like to do. So in that, some of the deferred maintenance Greg was talking about, the roof for this building, we postponed until we knew whether the levy passed or not. And so we do have other projects that we're looking at. We couldn't wait 3 or 4 more years.
Right.
But we could wait the year to see if the levy passed. So as we're moving forward with a capital request to the state, that's something else as we're looking at this building, what other deferred maintenance on this campus can wait to see if it can be included in those projects.
I think the argument that we've invested a lot, right? And we're making decisions about, do we invest this in direct services, or do we address some of these other pieces? And I think you have a good argument for we've done our part.
When we create budgets for those future projects and those bond projects, what I try to do is also include what the deferred maintenance dollar value would be for that facility. So if we invest 5 million in this new or renovation and make a change, there might already be $1 million of deferred maintenance that needed to be addressed. And that data we're capturing as well.
Go ahead, Roger.
I'd just like to make a comment about the fact that you put so much work into this thing. And at least in my experience, you've been able to take a lot of the subjectivity out of it. You know, essentially you have some data to say, yes, we ought to be doing this, and we can defer that. You know, in my past experiences, I say, oh, okay, well, what's the best guess by looking at it? You know, so I appreciate, and I know there's a ton, I mean, I'm not sure what that stack of paper looks like behind this thing, but it's rather substantial. Yeah, that's right. Well, I like the fact that there's a base there, and you can essentially update that as we go through time, because you're right, those are big numbers.
Yes, sir.
So again, nice job. I don't have any, you know, real questions about that. I was just looking at that, you know, number. All of a sudden it shops up to 18.8, you know, but I see where the 17 million's coming in. So I see that. So it's nice the fact that you've managed to gnaw your way through the first couple of years. And it sounds like for the most part, you've been able to accomplish something. I know that there's some dollars that have been deferred, and intelligently so. So, nice job.
Thank you. The 68 air conditioning units throughout the district, while it's an active academic year, as well as 5 roofs, those were challenging times, but necessary. And so I'm glad that we did them. This system is set up though in a way that can continue as kind of a legacy process.
I remember sitting here 2 or 3 years ago, and all of a sudden you look at this huge thing in front of us. And so you have to compliment that you've gotten through those first couple of steps and making progress. So.
All of us cuddled up around the screen trying to figure it all out. Indra, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I can't see my picture on there so I don't know if I'm showing to you, but
You are now, yeah.
oh, okay. I can't see myself, so I apologize if I'm making weird faces or something odd.
You're very small on the screen. It's okay. I just didn't know if
Okay.
you.
Oh, good. I just wanted to say that very nice presentation, easy to follow, nice flow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my takeaway, a couple of takeaways. So over time, the state's allocation of capital dollars was really inadequate over the long term to be able to meet increasing need and to maintain the building's facilities, right? So we have a gap of more resource needed. Has the college ever gone out to bond for an express purpose of capital improvement or renewal for just that purpose, sort of a maintenance and operations element to that?
To our knowledge.
And did you know if the colleges among the other 16 go to smaller bonds to be able to say to the community, look, the state's allocation formula is inadequate in order for us to meet current demand. So we need to go back to the homeowners and ask, or property owners, and ask for some support.
I think if I'm tracking with you right, I think it has been the justification and a capital bond or two. I'm thinking Columbia Gorge's most recent one was basically around paying off debt from previous project, and deferred maintenance was the rationale that they took to their taxpayers with a modest mill levy. I think one of the things we'll have to decide as a college is, if you recall, our last bond measure was built on it had a lot of complexities to it, not the least of which was it was a continuation for Jackson County and a new added one for Josephine County on top of the existing six that we had. So I think the question we'll have to ask ourselves is, when we do the facilities master planning work that Greg's team's also lead, what are we left with? Are we left with new capital projects, and how important are they? Are we left with exposure around deferred maintenance, and those combined or separately, how much appetite do we have to go to the taxpayer? So the question could go there. I mean, obviously for a deferred maintenance, it would be a smaller-ish number. So I can think of one school in particular. Well, I almost think of two, because I think that's the lion's share of what Mount Hood's was. I don't think Mount Hood is adding very, very little square footage. I mean, that's a community college that in 50 years just passed their first bond beyond the original one that built the college. So they basically said, folks, we just want to address what's happened to a 50-year-old college we've not been able to do through ongoing operations. So it's a sell that has been made a couple times.
Okay.
And it definitely could be part of ours. I think a lot of times the consultants tell you shouldn't go after a deferred maintenance bond, because your taxpayers often think of deferred maintenance in the concept of, and you'd explained it well as far as the state hasn't kept up with their investment, but a lot of times the consultants tell you taxpayers look at it like, if you can't take care of your own stuff, why are you asking me to pay tax money to pay for it for you?
And I guess I would sort of argue with the consultant to say, every home needs a new roof. We need to put the new infrastructure back into a home. You can't use the same boiler or furnace for 30+ years. And so we've been using that money to support our students. But I just think that might be something that this board or future board might really look at, because when you mix deferred maintenance with new projects, it seems that an easy thing for a voter to do is say, well, we want to pare that down. We don't like that, just like to your point, we don't like the deferred maintenance part. We're just going to go with the new stuff and have the college figure out how to do the other. Whereas if you had to sell something like a lower tax rate, or we're going to sell the bonds that were priced higher for a lower, and we're going to save you some maybe time at the end of selling those bonds. We're going to have some savings built into the bond structure, as well as sustaining the life of those buildings another 15, 20, 30 years. That just feels to me like it might be something that the board might want to consider, because gosh, there's so much work that has to be done over, when I look at buildings that are 11 years past their useful life. That's, health and safety. That's one of the things that jumped out at me.
So can I just pop in just a little history here? So been here for 28.5 years. When I started, we had Redwood campus, and that's all we owned. We had invested in leases in 2 buildings in downtown Medford, maybe 3 buildings in downtown Medford. Our first bond was to then expand our reach more into Jackson County. We did pay off debt. We paid off our leasehold improvements. And then our second bond and our first bond allowed us to buy this campus and then expand it. And so all of the levies that we've done in the past, the 2 major ones, was about expansion to allow for more students and to then come over into Jackson County, which we annexed in 97, 96. And so I wonder if that's why, thinking back, that's why they were worried about capacity more than fixing up the buildings at Redwood.
It makes total sense.
It begs a good question though, Gary, because as we think about the continued constraints on our operating budget, which deferred maintenance is not an insignificant piece of, even when we pass a capital bond for expansion, it doesn't lift the burden of ongoing operating costs that take away from our ability to provide direct support for teaching and learning. And so when we have to put air conditioners on buildings, it impacts the number of faculty and staff we're able to hire.
In fact, it might even exacerbate that, because now you've got more square footage and more buildings to actually maintain.
I think going back to Maria's point though, too, being able to show the fiscal responsibility of using what we've had in a planned, thoughtful way could be a selling point for something.
Absolutely. The fact that you to the air conditioning unit means that it's, the system.
Right.
You know where to find it.
It shows to the taxpayers that their investment matters to us.
Yeah, I think back to all the times I've voted for, my local school district, in my little town, and they're bonding and all that for improvements, maintenance, deferred maintenance. But it wasn't described very well at all. And because I'm in this field, I can say, well, I understand, but it wasn't presented in a way to say, we know everything we need from beginning to end, and here's our plan. And because we have something like this, it could be very helpful to ensure the perspective is correct.
I think we're armed with what we need to be armed with if we wanted to take that approach. If we just feel like we've got a lot, we don't know where to start. It's like, no, because we track it in such detail, we can tell you exactly what we need and how far it extends. So I think it begs an interesting question. We've got the transportation technology project that we're committed to, and then we're going to talk, as we talk through the lens of the facilities master plan. One of the really tough conversations we have to have is how judicious are we about considering added square footage, because of the cost of increased square footage with operations, maintenance, and stuff like that. But sometimes what they tell us, I challenge the question on, do we really have to build a new building in Grants Pass? And yes, we do, based on the facilities condition and is ADA compliant. But we're asking ourselves that. So there may be a scenario where at Table Rock, it's easier to prioritize using unused square footage, but we might hear long-term for Redwood, what you need to do is just build a new building and get some of these buildings offline because they're not there. And that's part of the
cost to
thoughtfulness
get
that
them
goes
up.
in there. But I think we're gonna have a really hard time looking at what the next 10, 20, 30 years for this college looks like without additional community support. But I also I'm, you know, I don't know what the voter climate will be
Interesting.
down the road, but I am confident the preparation we're doing going into that will help us make the strongest case possible.
So Indra, I see your hand up.
Yes, so my feeling is, in Josephine County I feel like deferred maintenance is an easier sell because people are used to doing and fixing up what they have over and over and over. And there's more aversion really to building new than just fixing up. But so I think it's not impossible. Voters do vote for new buildings and things, but I think you have to really detail why it's better and looking at the long term. Yeah, we could fix it up, for a few years, but I think the expansion for student growth is a big sell, and that or more new programs getting more kids through, but also the longevity that these buildings are they're not going to do what we need them to do, and we do need new, and that will be fiscally responsible with what we build. Like, it can't be an extravagant building with all the bells and whistles. Really, it has to be very practical. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or something you want to add?
I want to add this one final thought that I wanted to thank the board, me and Lisa, also because if it wasn't for your vision and commitment to funding these type of renewal processes, we wouldn't have completed any of this work. So I know there's a long road to go, to get through, but I want to thank you. I know it starts with you all. Thank you.
We'll move on to number 5. Any items on the regular meeting agenda?
We're going to talk about.
Well, it's just a question and answer time on our work session. So I had one idea that I was gonna kind of throw by here. Is that this one? So I see on our regular agenda that we're gonna have a presentation by RVTD, and I'm wondering about adding a discussion time under new business for the board to discuss what they're presenting and what their potential ask.
The potential.
So we anticipate that the presentation will be concluded with a request for support for their bond measure. And maybe instead of having the board deliberate during that presentation with the presenter there, if we hold that deliberation for new business down the agenda, then the board can deliberate amongst itself without maybe dialoguing with the presenter. To decide if
So we
it's
can,
approved.
so we can add another agenda 10.B, RVTD discussion.
I see, that's what the Q&As mean. Okay, got it.
On like how, is there something on the agenda that we need to fix before we start that? meeting?
Okay.
It's already set.
Because I was gonna say, I think we want to leave.
Yeah, it's literally about the agenda, not about
Gotcha.
so is everyone on board with that?
On board.
Any other questions about items on that agenda that we need to, any other new business that we needed to add or old business we forgot? All right, well then we will adjourn the work session at 4:44 and reconvene at 5 o'clock.